Live from the Washington, D.C. area, all empowered citizens need to know about intelligent use of resources, smart governance, inclusive communities, smart industry, and healthy, thriving urbanization. This is Smart Sustainability, the TV talk about shaping a sustainable future in the digital age with Nicolette, DeVidar. Life is beautiful and Earth a perfect place. There's so much focus on doomsday that what's collectively happening is actually contributing to speaking it into being because it's the power we have. So time to change the narrative and focus on that power which indeed we do have. Happiness, joy, lightheartedness, well-being, love are the foundation of the universe and the foundation of our very own essence of who we are. What the world's missing most is wisdom. Our topic tonight. Welcome on Smart Sustainability. Thanks for joining me. I'm Nicolette, DeVidar. Children wake up at night with nightmares about climate change, nightmares about the world ending, nightmares about dying, the end of civilization, fear of the future, depression and hopelessness. Drug use is a common side effect when humans are in their low frequency vibrations, and that's the key, low frequency. That's also when and how humans are easiest to control, confusing them on who they are, keeping them in a state of fear and stress, and ultimately in a mental prison made up by low vibration. Happy people are the antidote to a changing planet. They're full of joy, the antidote to death and robot talk. They see beauty in the original sense as a place of where spirit and form meet, the antidote to uncertainty and that very low frequency that keeps us imprisoned. Beauty in its original sense uplifts the spirit like none other, whether that's in art, in architecture, in nature, and in every other aspect of our lives. It has a certain vibration, a higher frequency. Positive emotions, by the way, are measurable, as are negative ones. They determine the state we're in, and the state we're in determines the state the world is in. So when you look around, it's not that hard to see really why we're in the chaos we're in and have the political representatives we currently have. Yes, I know, not everyone has made that connection yet, but just looking at plain realities, and as always, you're free to make your own observations. But when we keep focusing on nasty things, nasty is all we see. People who focus on criminals all the time begin to see criminals everywhere and in everything after a while. People who focus on betrayal tend to experience more betrayal, and on and on and on. Just go through your own life and you'll see that what you focus on does become reality. It's the creative power all humans have. Now, there's a collective effort in painting a dark picture of the world that results in many of us feeling powerless, small, dependent on others, and of course, dependent on governments. Insanity is everywhere. So I want to play a clip of Eckhart Tolle's take in an interview on whether the world is run by evil forces or actually just stupid people. Have a listen.
All the things that are happening in the world now, what politicians are doing, what the media are doing, the eternal question that arises, are they evil or malevolent, or are they just very stupid? There are two theories you can have. Look at things that happened, like countless examples. Iraq, invasion of Iraq, the whole story of Afghanistan. Is there some evil plot behind it all? That's what many people believe. They say it's all been planned. They've been planning it all along. That's one way of looking at it. To be polite, one could say they're very unconscious. But to be more blunt, I would say they're just plain stupid. What they do makes so little sense and is so absurd, it can only be, no, but what kind of stupid is that? Because these people, they have They probably all have the university degrees, I suppose. Most of these politicians and media people, they have university degrees. So it's not necessarily stupid in the sense of not intelligent enough. There's a deeper stupid than that. And that's a complete lack of wisdom. Wisdom is what we need, and wisdom arises out of awareness. We do not arrive at wisdom through improving conceptual thinking or knowledge. More knowledge doesn't give you more wisdom. To be able to think conceptually in a better way doesn't give you more wisdom. Wisdom transcends that. Wisdom is a deeper intelligence that arises out of awareness, that can look at the totality of the situation and see what the right course of action is, rather than attack just one thing and think, that's what we need to do. How we dealt with the pandemic is an example of that. Just attacking this one thing, complete disregard of secondary consequences that may be far worse than the original problem. Economic consequences, psychological consequences, completely unawareness, lack of wisdom, complete lack of wisdom. What humanity needs desperately is wisdom, not an increase of what conventionally we call intelligence. That has its place too, but intelligence without wisdom is actually dangerous, very dangerous.
It is.
Well, that puts your own power right back into the focus, doesn't it? And what he actually just said, so bringing all these aspects together, thinking about the consequences economically and so socially and in all other respects, that's what we focus here in Smart Sustainability mostly about. That's exactly the difference. But I want to get back to my intro, what we talked about, your power and how we can focus on that. Yes, Earth is changing. That's not in question. What's in question is what it all means and where the starting point is, the point towards real sustainability. Not made up concepts such as SDGs by people who are so disconnected from how the world functions and the origin of the world and our own human power that it's easy to see why we bark up the wrong tree. There's all this movement about making the world a better place. And don't get me wrong, it's a good movement. There is certainly some, when it comes from the right intent, there certainly is reason and intent and good ideals or motivation behind it. But there's also a lot of talk that it's broken and it needs improvement. And there's also a lot of talk that we humans are broken and need improvement. For centuries, in fact, we keep hearing we're broken and not good enough, we need improvement, etc. Some go even so far as to wanting to plant chips in your mind to connect you with Google and other ways to become superhuman. Human dreams of being able to read someone else's thoughts, being able to control the weather, able to master life's circumstances, though, are as old as mankind. What most fail to realize, though, is you are what you seek. So imagine you'd have the ability to influence the weather. You'd have the ability to read someone's mind. How would that affect your life, your environment, the planet? How would you apply these skills day in and day out? Imagine you could read what someone else is actually thinking about you when you enter a room. Would it scare you, or would you be rather comfortable with that? All these abilities are not exactly new. They're not dreams and they're not unachievable. They're divine ideas anchored in each and every one of us, along with the potential waiting to be developed. Remember, we're only using about 10% of our skills. Mystery schools as old as humanity have taught knowledge about those abilities throughout the ages, as well as how to develop them. Know thyself in every aspect and with every responsibility. Now, in past episodes, we talked about the future of humanity in terms of new concepts, new ideas, possible new systems to being able to live more in tune with who we are and in tune with nature. But the key, the starting point of everything, consciousness, awareness, which come from the spiritual side of things, we haven't really talked about. So how do we move beyond tech and digitization, which keeps us trapped in a digital matrix, towards wisdom? How do we learn to come to an understanding that the gifts in us are what we need to most effectively address the changes that are going on in the world? Joining me tonight is Diane Margalla, a French-Canadian Mady, and I hope I said this right, who wrote a book about living supernatural in a natural world. She says, when you fully own your power, you become powerful beyond measure. I would 100% agree with that. And joining us from Mumbai, India, is Rajni Shinaz, a woman closely tied to Bollywood who left her career and dream job in the movie industry to follow her spiritual calling. Rajni is a global ambassador for the Golden Door Awards and Dialogues, and she works with clients on healing past wounds, hurts, transgenerational issues, and so on. Things we're all grappling with on some level. Welcome the two of you at Smart Sustainability. Let's dive right in. Diane, then what is wisdom for you? What does it represent?
For me, as I've been growing,
yeah,
you know, both as a human being and living life, I've always known that I was connected to a larger invisible world. And it had different rules and laws than what I've been taught socially, living it. But there were so many people out there that were talking as though that they were the authority on the subject, and they had the rules and the laws and it wasn't until I realized that I wasn't reading about it. I wasn't taking classes. I've been this way all my life as a psychic medium, being able to talk to other living dimensions, being able to talk to to our planet, to the forests and the trees and the animals, and feeling that connection between everything. So the difference between knowledge and wisdom are quite different. So I find that when people truly can build wisdom is through experience. And over time. Yeah. So when I was younger and would be living my life as connected as I am to the universe, I had a lot of different types of reactions from people. So because they would be by my side and they would see what was going on. And with that connection, that deep connection that everything is connected. And the ability to be able to have telepathy, as you mentioned, that some people felt invaded. Whereas when I'm looking at the physical world, because I've had telepathy my whole life, there's no judgment. Like I have zero judgment of people. So because I've always been able to pick up on, telepathically and what's going on in their heart. A lot of times what's going on in people's heart has nothing to do with what they're saying or doing. So, and anything that's going on in the world, we are all capable of, and we have free will. So the difference between wisdom and knowledge can come from books, YouTube. Wisdom comes from, first of all, experiencing it and allowing yourself to go for that deep dive into who are you and in relation to the world around you. Who are you?
I think
what does that truly look like?
Wisdom, well, some people would say wisdom is the difference between a sage and a philosopher. So the sage applies the knowledge, the actual practical skills, and the philosopher reads about it and philosophizes over it. I think there's definitely something to it. But when we talk collectively about wisdom, I think that there's also more that aspect that when we talk about making the world a better place, we have all these different movements that are going on. We're looking at all sorts of what can we do in the physical world to actually have a more equality-driven, a more equity-driven, a fairer world, etc. But I think the wisdom itself, as you said, that is something that can only come from within. And I think most women, if we're really honest, and yes, I have to make the difference here between male and female in a physical sense on this point, because I do think wisdom, women have that access to wisdom intuitively. We just know, the heart just knows what the mind never understands. So you just know. And I think a lot of this comes from seeing the connections on a different perception where they are. Now, Rajni, are you back on with us?
Yes.
All right. What do you think about wisdom? Why do we need wisdom in these day and ages most? Now, you were with the Golden Door Awards. You have a lot of those generative dialogues, for example, etc. Why do we need wisdom most?
I think the reason we need wisdom is the same reason that the car needs fuel to run. And what has happened is that just as we were talking about the difference between knowledge and wisdom, that we have been, born and brought up with this thought of knowledge is power, knowledge is power. And I realized that no, knowledge is not power. Knowledge is power when implemented. And that is what kind of translates it into wisdom, as Dan was saying it rightly as well, that wisdom is through experience. And only when you are able to, in your complete authenticity, live the knowledge that you have and put it into practice, it converts and transmutes into wisdom at a point in time. And it is still different from the inherent wisdom or the intuitive wisdom that you just mentioned, as we, the female species, have with us. And it is not that the male species don't have it. It is just slightly dormant on the other side, I would say, and it is more active. Because I feel as the feminine gender, the one who the creator has gifted to be the creator on the physical plane, we are more connected to nature than the pragmatic male species who is the provider. And just for that reason, I feel that the connect of the inherent wisdom that we have within us is far fine-tuned with us than the other species. But I think if we all are working with great efforts to tune into our own awareness and move towards experiencing the knowledge and putting it into our daily practice, then we will open the gateways to wisdom in a much larger, in a much collective way. And I feel all of us who are here, it is not of being better or being special or being gifted. I just feel that it is like going on a trek. There are some people who are, a little ahead, and there are some people in the middle, and there are some people behind, but they are all on the same trek, moving up to the same summit. And I think that that's what it is when people have kind of aligned themselves and fine-tuned or, connected to our latent gifts that we have, and some who have not. I wasn't seeking spirituality or anything while I was for 23 years in Bollywood.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did you actually get into this, Rajni? I mean, particularly comparing it from the film industry, which is probably one of the most artificial industries that are out there.
I would say I would still like to correct that it may not be completely as an artificial industry, but I would say that it is where being artificial or acting brings you the money. So the idea of method in madness and moving from chaos to peace for me was 180 degree. I have partied for the best known years of my life.
Yeah.
And I have just been with this dream to go to the Cannes Festival, to go to Hollywood. I've had this wonderful tour of the Warner Brothers studios when I went for my US trip. So my entire life was this dream, and I did not know that someone up there was writing a different script for me. And it was something that is not learned. It is not something that I went to a workshop and gathered several certificates for myself and sitting on the other side of the fence. For me, God or the power or whoever you may call him by actually put me to experience the aspect of pushing a rope through a needle hole.
Yeah.
And today to sit on this side of the fence, to hold somebody else's hand and say, have faith, even though all of this is happening around us, there is good enough things that are good around you as well. And we just need to open our eyes to see it, to pick it. And that's what we are here for. You are doing good in one corner of the world, Diane is doing good, and today we are on the same platform.
Yep.
So it is just that the collective negativity that you spoke about,
Yeah.
it is in focus, and it is magnified with that focus, because that's what sells. Fear sells. That's why religion and everything can earn great bucks. Even spirituality can earn great bucks, because people have been instilled with fear, psychosis, and the entire civilization, so to speak, could only be controlled with the fear of the unknown and the fear of the unseen.
That's
And that's
right.
why fear of everything is the biggest emotion that humans undergo, and wisdom
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
not present at that time.
Yeah. Now contrast that, what you just said, so we're constantly kept in a state of fear, for example, with the opposite, meaning that when we really get into our full power and we own our full power, and what's then going to happen to the rest of the world? You see what I mean? The contrast is real, like that's a very, very powerful thing, because it would make everything else irrelevant. I'm going to call Diane on this one, because Diane, you said so in your book particularly, that when you own your power, you're very powerful. So imagine you have everyone on this planet, or even half of the people on this planet, going into their full power. There is no one left to control.
Actually, I'd love to address that. Thank you. Years ago, there was a guru named Maharishi, and he initially took 700 people, and together they went into what was referred to as transcendental meditation. You could call it unified prayer. It's when 700 people came together and they had the same intention of world peace. And at the time, it was aimed toward terrorism, because terrorism was, again, the whitewash of fear at that time. So he wanted to reduce fear of the planet, and so through that he addressed terrorism. And so he did his research, and prior to that weekend of 700 people coming together, he did his research and as to the largest cities around the world, and what was the crime rate, what was the 911 calls, trips to the hospital, domestic violence, car accidents. You name it, he had all the records on it. After a weekend of 700 people coming together in the transcendental meditation of world peace and calmness and unity, he was able to show beyond a mathematical probability that there was a difference in these major cities around the world. Now that experiment has been conducted literally thousands of times since that time. And there's an amazing woman called Lynn McTaggart, and she has taken all the scientists and doctors and research and compiled it all together. And it is now shown that it doesn't take 1% of the population or even half the population. What it would take to change the entire global resonance into a more positive, peaceful, loving environment globally is not about how many people come together. It's the quality of the people that come together. What is their personal vibration like? When people, like Roshani and myself and you, Nicolette, and we see the world in such a beautiful, positive way. And when people like us, as we resonate, we draw together other people that also resonate in those same frequencies. And as we come together and share that out, it goes out like a wave, like dropping a pebble in a calm pond, and it resonates throughout the world. So it does not even take half the planet. It just needs a few to literally start seeing the world the way that it truly is. We think we have a phone. Everyone seems to have a phone. Even children have phones these days. When you come into your own empowerment, you realize you don't need a phone. You are a phone.
Actually, hang on a second. I want to get,
no,
hang on a second. I want to get to this in a little bit. I don't want to jump here ahead because I want to break it down a little bit here. Because when we, so we talk about vibration, we know what we're talking about because we're sort of all in it. Now, there are some people who have absolute zero connection with any of this. So how do we explain to someone that why the spiritual actually matters and is the starting point of all things versus starting in the material? Rajni, you want to take that one?
Sure. There's this very beautiful line in Meher Baba's discourses that spirituality has to make a man more human.
Mm-hmm.
And that spoke like loudly screeching into my heart, because we have concepts that we run behind, that spirituality has to make me more spiritual. But that sentence actually got that spirituality has to make man more human. And it is the aspect of our inherent being as a human, of the natural intrinsic self that we are, as I felt once in meditation, that everything created is very pristine, is very good in its sense. But it is we through the ages who have adulterated, just like the water in the milk and the stones in the grains, and everything going in from one time to the other has been adulterated. And today the seeming good and the seeming bad of the duality is very, very gravely stark in front of our eyes, and we are experiencing it because of the energetic force that we are going through as the planet, as the race, that we are seeing manifestations of things which earlier people would meditate for x 40 days and 70 days or some hundreds of days and then get a glimpse and something would happen. And today the experience of doing something or putting something into practice, the manifestation of that experience is far deeper and faster. The reason is the collective push that we are getting in this age for humanity to go inwards. We have dabbled and in shallow waters quite a lot, and today we are head on pushed into the deep waters, and there is no way out. Just all through the COVID, I did almost about 450 lives on with FB lives and all of that. We were doing things to sustain, and a whole lot of people, the first thing was that we are talking, I'm just continuing that point, that the larger thing was not fighting COVID, the larger thing was fighting the fear of COVID.
Absolutely.
And this part, that today's spirituality is just as I said earlier, that it is fuel to your car. You do not look after the vehicle with the basic aspect of it needing the fuel that it needs to run. Then there is nothing more that you can do. You can have the best Ferrari, you can have the best of the engine, you can have the best of everything, but the fuel still is required for it to run. And electric, the electric ones need a different kind to run. So that's where the age we are.
So 3 things I want to talk about: manifestation, duality, and then also understanding that we are vibrational beings. I want to pick up on one thing that you said, and it's the duality. And if you actually look at the word human, that already contains the duality that's in it, because it comes from humus, soil, which is earth, and mana, heaven. So we're the link in between. So it's the duality is right in there, which sometimes I think we forget when we talk about human. We are so trained to think about the human is imperfect, the human is incomplete, the human needs to be improved, the world needs to be improved. Those are all false premises to begin with, because we're totally missing the point on this one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I want to
completely
talk
agree.
you for a moment on manifestation. Now, you spoke a little bit, Rajni, about manifestation, because I think it's really important to address manifestation in terms of how it happens. Because we say, well, a lot of people, I think, know at this point that it starts on the spiritual, it goes through different planes, and then it manifests. But at the end of the day, it's energy. And so once we grasp that, then I think it becomes a lot easier for us to deal with those difficult changes. We see what's happening in the world, and we become a lot more comfortable in addressing those, because when you know how the world sort of functions, well, there's no reason for fear anymore. That's, I think, the premise of it. So about the energy vibration, I want to shift to Diane here, because Diane, you work with vibrations. I want you to explain to us a little bit first, how did you discover your gift, or that you actually were working with it all the time?
Actually, the way I discovered that I was working with energy was by discovering that others were not. So, for instance, when I was 10 years old, my family moved to a new neighborhood. We were on a circle. It's called a cul-de-sac. And for the first time, I was outside playing with the kids out on the street, playing a new game called hide and seek, where one person hides their eyes on a tree and counts, and all the rest of the kids run away and they hide, and then you have to go find them. And then you run back to home base, and whoever gets there first is either the next person to be it. Well, I wasn't a very good runner, so I didn't understand the game. If you're hiding your eyes, you're counting to 20 and everybody's hiding, what's the premise of the game when you know where everybody's hiding? I didn't realize that the other kids didn't know where each other was hiding. So there was lots and lots of circumstances throughout my childhood life that I discovered other people were not living the same reality that I was. They were living in a different physicalness to who we are, rather than the energy aspect of who we are. You know, talking to a child before it's born and telling my mother that the neighbor was going to have another child was totally dismissed.
Yeah.
Until I told her it was going to be a boy. I told her his name was going to be Jimmy, and I told her who the parents were. And it wasn't until Jimmy came along that my mother looked at me. She's like, oh, it's like, okay. So it no longer became about whether or not we have these abilities. Then it suddenly turned into whether it was right or wrong. You know, did God, plant this? Is this his will that we want to? So then it became all the social laws, not the universal source laws, which are completely opposite to one another. So I concluded very early in life that if I was not meant to have these gifts, that's impossible. God doesn't make a mistake. There is a larger creation, and they don't make mistakes. And if I can read other people's minds, and I know that they can feel me too, then everybody has the same abilities. And I learned that very young in my life. So as I said, it was only a matter of me discovering that the average person claimed not to have those abilities. That's how I discovered that I do. So up till this point in my life, I have written down all the different experiences that I've had, and I've accumulated 22 different gifts beyond the physical 5 senses. So if I have 22 and I've only scratched the surface, then I know we all have 22. And as Roshani was saying earlier, we're all on the same train together. It's just, are you on the front or the middle or at the back? But we are all moving through this forward. We're going to hit our destination.
Yeah.
It's just some people are just sitting a little further ahead. That's all. So I discovered, as having this as a profession, that all I ever need to do is simply be one step in front of the person I'm talking with. That's it. And just as someone else is in front of me, and then they can help me with some things for me to explore my vibration and where else I can take it, then they are guiding me. I'm the teacher. I'm also the student. We all are.
Yeah.
We are brothers and sisters to each other.
Yep.
We're all in the same journey.
Yep. Now living with supernatural gifts, give our audience or our viewers some other gifts that are in those 22 Well, the 22 that you listen, I don't need you to go through the 22. I will say
Perfect.
something for the 22. It is actually a very, very interesting number. And Diane and I had this conversation prior to coming actually on the show, because I'm writing about the intelligence of creation, and in that I talk about the 22 divine ideas. So there you go. So with those, give us some of, just a few, give us like 4 or 5 gifts, Diane, as a classic example of what those are and how we could apply those today.
Okay, so for instance, I love science where it is right now. It's just excites the crap out of me, because as a child, looking at flowers and trees and shrubs, I saw the aura around it. I saw the living vibration of its entity around it. Yeah. And since then, I came across a fabulous, can I make a plug to a TED Talk? It's called Trees Talk, and it's by Suzanne Simard. Simard, and it's a TED Talk. And so she talks about now the science behind vibrational, how trees talk to each other, etc. They talk through the moss on the ground as well as their root system. They give nitrogen to each other.
And it's a worldwide communication system. That's something we need to mention. It is worldwide. Trees talk to each other worldwide.
Exactly. Yes. So as a child, I picked up on that. Yeah. So I could see that living essence as a vibration around and through all things around me. Yeah. Water has memory. Yeah. Water also holds the intention. Dr. Samurai Emoto, his work in with water has confirmed that for decades now. Yep. I picked that up as a child, and I've lived my life that way. That on, a lot of times that when I hold water, I will set the intention in the water so that as I'm drinking it, it's healing my body, because the healing intention was entered in that water.
It is actually the charging. It is actually the charging of the water with the intent, which is very similar to what the Catholic Church moved out, so to speak, as part of the Eucharist ritual, actually.
One of the things that I discovered in 2011 was my partner and I went to Hawaii, and we were at a luau, an outside party, and at the end, when we were taking the group bus back to our hotel, we were told that there had been an earthquake in Japan and that there was a tsunami on its way. Yeah. And I was like, the idiot at the back of the bus, like, excuse me, how high is the tsunami? Well, it was 100 feet, basically 10 stories, a 10-story building. That's how high it was.
So what are some of the gifts we're talking about, Diane? So if you're not going to take a step, do I need to give you a lead?
We can totally change the weather. We can totally manipulate the water, the air, fire. We have complete control over it. Yeah. So when the tsunami was on its way, I refused to believe that the universe would put me on a little island just to wash me off. I thought, okay, there's no such thing as a coincidence. It's simply the divine talking. That's it. Mm-hmm. So I went into deep meditation. I spoke to the ocean. And when I did, I tapped into tens of thousands of other people doing the exact same thing I was. Talking and becoming the water, saying, it's okay, you can calm down now. It's all gone. It's okay, you can calm down. Not only did the tsunami not hit, but we watched the water recede not once, but twice. We watched the water recede back into the ocean as we told it was going to, and it did not come back as a tsunami. Mm-hmm. CNN reported that their gauges offshore indicated that the tsunami was directly offshore. Yeah. And when it did not hit, they were asked by CNN, the oceanographer was asked why, what's going on, and they said that they had no idea. But I knew what was going on.
That brings up
thousands of people were talking to the ocean.
Yeah, but that brings up a really essential point, and I've been very adamant about making this point, that I think when we look at sustainability, for example, we're barking up completely the wrong tree, because when you say we can tune into the weather and things like that, the key aspect, though, is to connect with the spiritual side of nature, to connect with the spiritual side of the elements, to connect with the spiritual guides of who's ruling the elements. So that's how we can actually influence this, and not do it out of a plain liberal thing, because that would create chaos, but it has to sort of be as part of the greater whole. That's where also the wisdom comes back in, so that we do not offset the purpose of the greater whole of whatever intent is going on in the universe. And I think that's an important point. So I think it's really, when we look at nature, it's reconnecting with the spiritual side of nature. Rajni, I want to move over to you on this one. First of all, I know you feel pretty strong that we learn from nature. I want to also ask you about some of your gifts in how you help people heal, or how you facilitate people to basically self-heal. Can you tell us something about that?
The most important aspect of my journey has been that I've been like an on-job learner with divinity. And right through my own, opening up of the journey, I wouldn't call it awakening for the reasons that I, was mentioning earlier, that we use sometimes words just, very loosely. And that's what happens also when wisdom is absent, where we do not understand the difference between sympathy and compassion, or being educated and cultured. So I would say when my journey just began, and I was breaking into this whole thing of why these things are happening, and just like Diane said as well, I was getting messages about people around me, to things that I could have absolutely no clue of or know about. And I didn't have any guru in life. I didn't have anybody to go to and ask, hey, what's up? What is happening? What is all this? So it was almost talking with something talking in my head and me answering back in my physical plane. So when things were opening up, I was guided to clean up a lot of my own garbage. And I would just sit for hours and just write down what was happening, because I was worried that I would forget. And I literally would sometimes, because I felt that I was zoning out a bit, kind of a thing. And I would just then sit with a huge diary and then just write down whatever. I didn't have voices or anything. I just had very clear dictation in my head. Tell her to go to the doctor, she is pregnant. Like, oh, okay, I've not spoken to her at all for months. And like, how do I just call up somebody and say, you are pregnant, have you shown the doctor? So there were just bizarre things that would, happen. But all of the things that I was guided, now do this, now think about this, now release this person. What is releasing the person? Okay, see this person completely disappear. See as if this person is going away, 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 far off. And now you can't see, the person is in the woods, the person is in the clouds. So those kind of things started happening, and I was just writing down, which later developed into the sessions that I was guided to do for my clients. So everything today, which is a session, is not something that is off the shelf kind of a thing, or a recording or anything of that sort, but it is what divinely was dictated to me to work on my own self, through which I stand here today. And it was complete divine grace for even to implement, because I believe that divinity can guide. It's like the GPS, but we have to drive the car. Even when you are at the red light, the GPS block stops, it doesn't move. So the important part of my work was that I was guided and realized, was bringing practical living spirituality into people's lives, to help people understand that spirituality is not woo-hoo. It's not just to be in the books, and not the profundity of, oh, I'm spiritual. No, it is about being in the muck and being the lotus. It is about living your karmic life with all the circus and drama around you, and rising above it through the efforts and endeavors that you do to go within. It got me this analogy of, there are these old elevators, old lifts which were there, which had a black box behind it. And when the lift would go up, the box would go down. And it gave me this analogy, showing me this image of the lift, that just like that, the deeper you go, the higher the lift will rise.
Okay, give us some examples of practical spirituality, practical lived spirituality day by day. So give us some examples in terms of how would you look at this and how would you implement this, let's say, on a Monday morning, for example.
Okay. So for me, it was seeing the good in people. So there are a whole lot of times I wouldn't socialize with people because that's not my circle. I don't want to socialize. But this person is damn good at what he or she does. And I started always seeing, I used to see beyond that, that it's okay if I don't want to party with you, but you're great to work with. And I would actually be able to tap into the goodness and the potential and get my work done and get the work out. And it would also be a lesson for that person. Oh, I could do this. So it started by putting in that, let me, be the mindset of the yin and the yang. That entire circle is white, but there is a black dot in it, and the entire circle is black and there's a white dot in it. The same way, nobody and none of us are completely black or white. Everybody that is completely redundant and so-called seeming bad also has that dot of good. And I try to see that what is the good in this person.
Okay,
And
that's a
try
good
to
start.
extract
So
that.
seeing the good in each person, that's a great start. Diane, when we talk about practical spirituality, and we also have to talk about practical, applying in a practical way your gifts, for example. So when someone has developed the gifts, or someone is born with the gifts, we all have them, some develop them, some are born with it, etc. But what does that mean to you in terms of living with that gift? How do you start your day, for example?
Oh, I start my day first by meditation every single day. And through those times, just when you're in you're not quite awake, but you're not quite asleep, and your brain goes in this beautiful wavelength, totally connected with source energy. It helps to relax my entire body, helps to set my day on the total right frequency of just really looking forward to starting my day. There's a lot of things that come through during those meditations that actually manifest into physical form. And so when it manifests, first of all, I'm already prepared for it. I'm already expecting it. And when it happens, I'm able to respond to it in a way that I'm already ahead of it's like having a baseball thrown at me, and I'm already sitting there with a catcher's mitt in the right position in order just to simply catch it. So it just starts everything out on the right key. I discovered a long time ago that really meditation really is the key to the universe. It just sets everything on the right tone, and whatever issues pop up throughout the day, whether I get cut off on the road as I'm driving, I don't react. I respond. There's a difference. There's a total difference. And if my day starts late that I'm not able to meditate, I can feel it throughout the entire day. My frequency is different. My relationship with the people on this planet and the experiences that I have, I can tell the difference. Having a total connection to source energy has a lot of empathy involved in it. You can relate to your fellow human being on a scale that is unprecedented to when we can't relate to someone else. We can talk to each other in a way and relate.
Because source energy, when you see through a different lens, and I think that's where a lot of the understanding comes from.
For sure.
Including to one's own self, right? So, but that kind of, so we have about 5 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit in terms of when we apply this concept and we look at the planet in the state it is in right now, and the world, the way where societies are in, where humans are at this point, the future of humanity. Let's talk about it from a creative perspective versus the classic, oh, the world's going to end tomorrow and we're all going to die. So when we apply this concept from the spiritual side, it puts us, first of all, in the driver's seat, much more in the driver's seat, once we're connected with source energy, right? So
Absolutely.
we can literally create the world we want to live in going forward. Now, I want to talk about, can both of you explain in terms of how we get into that space, and how, when you are connected with source energy, when you're connected with your whole self, how that actually impacts your environment, or the environment, your environment individually, and our society collectively. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay.
I would suggest the first thing that people would want to consider is to get out into nature. Take your darn shoes off. Our ancestors had it right when they wore leather shoes, leather-soled shoes. Yeah. It allows the vibration of the planet to come into our feet, and we come in unison. You know, when we look at how the planet functions, the planet has it right. We have it wrong. We have to, as a nation, it all starts with the individual. Get out into nature, take off your shoes, walk on the ground. You will feel that connection. And as you do, you will start to notice the world around you. You will start to notice a leaf on a tree. We look at a tree, we don't typically see the leaves on it, we just see a tree. When you start to actually look at it, we start to hear the birds, connect with them, connect with nature. Nature has it right.
Yep.
And as we have that connection with the grounding and the connection with the earth beneath our feet, that can include gardening, that can include pottery, that can include walking on a beach, walking on the sand, walking on grass, walking through your garden. Gardening is fabulous. Anything to do with nature that you're actually touching and feeling and experiencing, it brings your frequency will organically come into that frequency. And all the, he said, she said, that monkey chatter that goes on in the mind, all the gossip and the should have and the woulda and the couldas, it all releases because you are coming into the vibration of the planet, which is, there's nothing more natural than nature. So you are coming into that frequency. And once you do, you'll want more of it. I guarantee you, you'll just want more of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a big barefoot walker myself, and nature is really what you learn, what I learned from in terms of how the universe works. If we ever want to learn, and this is actually for our viewers too, I think this is one of the biggest issues. You heard me say it before. I think that it's really difficult when we come up with all these sustainable ideas, but how can we come to sustainable ideas if we don't even know how the universe works or how nature works? That's a huge issue. So learning from nature definitely be a big start. Rajni, I want to give you the last word on this one too. What's your take on that?
I think besides everything that Diane rightly said, that is there. Now, to bring that connection of the nature, in case you cannot go out so much or do anything, I would say see the nature within your space. You're utilizing water right into your houses, right in your palms. And to pray upon food before you sit to eat. And I pray even on the French fries and the samosas. It's not just about the food, it's about everything. And praying to food, it is about, I pray even that may I put onto my plate only how much my body can consume, so that I do not waste food. And I pray upon the water for cleansing and for working, with me, for me. So when I'm doing everything in my life, I take it to the higher power. And for people who do not believe in no power at all, I always say, start believing in yourself and the energy that is driving you. You are expending energy the moment you're waking and while you are sleeping, just by being a living being. So believing in that source of whatever you want to name it, is good enough a starting point to connect to the source within.
And that is a wonderful ending. Thank you so much for both of you for coming on. Thank you so much for watching. This is really a big point, because with all the efforts that are going on in terms of trying to live in a sustainable world and a sustainable planet, remember, it all starts with you, with us, within. That's the starting point, nowhere else. On that note, have a wonderful evening, and we see you next week. Have a good night.